Hello, everybody. It is Randy Ray at the Literate Texan, broadcasting from Driftwood Ranch a second time today with a much belated announcement for Horror Mayhem 2024. I felt really bad about putting up my announcement video so late in the month, but I haven't felt real well. And then I looked at a list of the co-hosts that I have for this particular event, which was created by Scott and Becky at the Bookish Bryants. And I felt bad about it until I realized there are 16 hosts. So I think word's gotten out by now through all their announcement videos, but I'm gonna make an announcement video too. And I'll list all the hosts in the description as usual. So Horror Mayhem is an event that focuses mostly on, if you want it to, shorter horror fiction. So we're talking 200 words, 200 words, what am I saying? 200 to 250 pages. So, but, you know, I break all the rules with these things, and as long as you read one horror book over the course of the month of May, you know, I feel like you can give yourself the little merit badge for having participated in Horror Mayhem. But I have books of all sizes that I'm considering for this, and, you know, I'll talk about those too. But, you know, there are optional weekly prompts for 4 weeks. And then there are bingo cards too, which you can download over at literatexan.com. I've posted them up there. It should be the first link on the page, in fact, the bingo cards. So it just depends on how you want to do it. Here are the weekly prompts. Week 1 is local horror. And I thought that was going to be kind of tricky. But then when I looked up, I guess it was Denton, Texas ghost stories or Denton, Texas horror stories. Turns out there's at least 2 books about all the haunted attractions here in Denton. Some of which, like the local used bookstore that I go to, Recycled Books, I didn't even realize were haunted. Of course, I don't believe in hauntings at all. So, but you know, it's rumored to be haunted. And of course, you can't live in Denton for very long without hearing about the Goatman Bridge. So I'll probably pick up one of those books and read one for week 1. Week 2 is movie horror. That one's pretty easy. I mean, God knows there are plenty of novelizations of, there are plenty of novelizations of horror movies, but there are also a lot of horror movies that are based on books, like Dracula and Frankenstein and The Invisible Man and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and The Haunting of Hill House and so on and so on and so on. But that's for week 2. I will probably read the novelization of the most recent Halloween movie, which I understand. And of course, I disliked the last Halloween movie very much. I thought it was awful. But I understand the novel's good, so I'm going to give it a shot and see what I think. I'll probably be disappointed. Week 3, classic horror. There's plenty of that out there. The obvious choices are, of course, Frankenstein, Dracula, The Invisible Man, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The Haunting of Hill House would be considered classic. You know, that's, you know, a really early example of a haunted house novel, which is not the same thing as a ghost story, by the way. A haunted house novel has its own set of genre rules. And The Haunting of Hill House probably does it as well as any. I did not like Hell House by Richard Matheson, and I wouldn't consider it a classic either. Although I do generally like Richard Matheson, I just thought Hell House was dull. But you know, yeah, classic horror. There's plenty of it out there. Quick Google search will give you a list of titles. I'm going to show off some of my horror selections in a minute. Week 4 is contemporary horror. So that would be something recent like maybe How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. The bingo card has 36 spots on it. And I'm just going to run through these really quickly. 1, Universal Monsters. The younger people watching my channel, of which there aren't many, probably don't know anything about the Universal Monsters, but those came out in the 30s, beginning with Dracula and then followed up with the wonderful James Whale Frankenstein movies, Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. Most of those went on for quite a while. The Wolfman was really good too. Number 2, graphic novels, comic books, alternate media. Number 3, cult horror. Number 4, indie horror. Number 5, personal horror and phobias. Number 6, haunted house. The best haunted house horror novel that I've ever read, by the way, is The House Next Door by Anne River Siddons. Number 7, possession. Number 8, religious horror. I used to own a bookstore that specialized mostly in horror books. And I had a religious horror section, which I pointed out to some of the, let's just say there's a lot of fundamental Christians in this area who did not think that a bookstore that focused on horror books was entirely Christian. And I would show them the religious horror section. You know, I had all the Left Behind books there and stuff too. Never sold one of them. In fact, it's one of my favorite bookstore stories. One of the churches opened up a religious bookstore across the street from me too. I don't think it cut into my business at all. Number 9, body horror. Number 10, slasher. Number 11, killer animals. Number 12, horror adjacent. So sci-fi, romantic, etc. Number 13, translated horror. You know, a good one for that might be Let the Right One In, which is a terrific novel. Number 14, diverse authors. Number 15, kidnappings. Number 16, psychological horror. Number 17, extreme horror. I'm going to pass on that. You know, as I've gotten a little bit older and gotten sick, some of the more extreme horror is a little too extreme for me, which is really fun. Number 18, One for Packs. That's the green cover on the bookmark tag. Number 19, cozy horror. I don't know of an example of cozy horror, but I like the idea. I'll have to look for some of that. Number 20, nonfiction based on a true story. Number 21, cannibalism. Number 22, apocalyptic or post-apocalyptic. I've got a set of 4 novels set in the Walking Dead universe. And 2 of them focused on the governor, who was one of my favorite characters at the time. And I remember them being terribly written, just awful. Looked like they hadn't been edited at all. But I may give those another shot just to cross that off. Number 23, elemental/environment. So I guess something about maybe a giant tornado or something. Number 24, folk horror. I have a folk horror collection of short stories. Number 25, ghosts. Yeah, ghost stories are great, and there's so many collections of those. I try to read some ghost stories around Christmas time every year. That was actually a tradition in Victorian England. Of course, because that's what a Christmas Carol is a ghost story. Number 26, witches. Number 27, cryptids. Number 28, cosmic horror. That's an easy one. I mean, all you got to do is pick up some H.P. Lovecraft. And, you know, some of these might qualify for multiple marks, too. I understand that Spring into Adventure is extending on into May. So, you know, if you wanted to overlap, you could read At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft, which is cosmic horror, but at the same time, it's an adventure novel. Number 29, Home Invasions. Number 30, Aliens. Whitley Strieber, anyone? Number 31, Curses. 32, Dolls. 33, Clowns. I don't know why clowns are so scary. One of my many careers throughout my extraordinary life was as a clown who did children's parties. And somewhere, you know, I'm not going to show it on screen here, obviously, but I have a picture of me in my clown makeup with my hat and my bow tie and nothing else on, but I'm holding a shower curtain over all the rest of my body. And it's very entertaining. You'd never know it was me now because obviously I have the beard and my face has gotten much wider as I've gotten fatter and older. But every once in a while I'll show that to a lady friend of mine just for giggles. But a surprising number of these lady friends are scared of clowns. Everybody loves a clown. Why can't you? That's what Jerry Lewis's son sang in that song. Number 34, holiday horror. Christmas Carol would qualify for that too. Number 35, evil children. And number 36, technological horror. And I just want to show off a couple of the horror books I've got laying around here. I say they're just laying around here. I actually brought them in here so I could show them off. I've got a Penguin copy of The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I'll probably revisit it this year. And this definitely qualifies as a shorter horror novel too. It comes in at about 182 pages. I've got Dracula here. Dracula probably comes in just a little bit over. This is the Norton Critical Edition. So this is a lot of fun because Norton Critical Editions, if you're not familiar with them, don't include just the text, but they also include critical essays and other stuff. So you've got reviews and reactions to Dracula from the Daily Mail in 1897 and from Spectator in 1897 and from the San Francisco Chronicle in 1899. There are articles about theatrical adaptations of Dracula. There's criticism by, I don't know any of these names, but y'all might. I'm not going to start reading them all out loud. But anyway, yeah, Norton Critical Editions are great for any kind of classic novel. I'm going to reread Rebecca, which I read when I was 18 by Daphne du Maurier. Big fan of Alfred Hitchcock in the movie. It was really good. And then this one's translated, I believe. It's called Hex by Thomas Old Huvelt. And I'm probably mispronouncing that, but that should come no surprise to anyone who's followed my channel for any length of time, because I mispronounce stuff constantly. I've got At the Mountains of Madness here by H.P. Lovecraft. Again, this is a really nice shorter work too. Oh, golly whiz. I have got, Michael K. Vaughn will be happy to see this, The Horror Stories of Robert E. Howard. Last year I read Pigeons from Hell, and I liked it. But I haven't read any of the other stories in here, but he was part of the circle that hung out with and wrote to and from with H.P. Lovecraft. So a lot of his horror stuff is almost related to H.P. Lovecraft. It's got a similar flavor to it. What else have I got over here? Oh, that's Captain Blood. That's for my Adventures project. Okay, Thomas Ligotti, Grimscribe, which I got this copy from Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads. Thank you so much for this. I used to have a copy of this. I used to have all of Ligotti's books, but I sold them when I had to sell my library. And this is definitely not a shorter work of horror. This is Stinger by Robert R. McCammon from when he was still doing his horror period in the 80s and 90s. And I've actually already started that one. Man, he's a dynamite writer. And it's funny, back in those days, you know, when I was like 19 years old, I dated this woman who's really into Robert McCammon. And I was kind of a little bit of a snob, you know, because I was working on my English degree and I was a big fan of Stephen King. And I kind of marketed those Robert R. McCammon books as a Stephen King light thing. So I kind of turned my nose up at it. But her apartment complex was next to a 7-Eleven where we would walk over to get her Marlboros. And they sold paperback novels at that time in 7-Eleven. This was 1989. And, you know, when she'd finished one Robert McCammon novel, she'd pick up another one. And so I finally read, I think it was Swan Song, which is basically McCammon's post-apocalyptic horror story. It's his The Stand. And a lot of people I know prefer Swan Song to The Stand. So what else we got here? We got a whole bunch of stuff here that's horror still. Lone Women by Victor Laval. This is something I haven't read yet. It was a Book of the Month Club pick. I'm buddy reading it with someone, but I can't share who it is for reasons that shall probably be explained later. That'll probably be a quick read, even though it's not under 250 pages. Most of these books I'm showing off aren't 250 pages. Last year, I really specialized in reading short stories from anthologies. And I've got a few of those on my Kindle here, which is why I'm not looking at the screen, because I'm looking at my Kindle, because I wanted to show off all these horror novels I've got on here too. Where the heck did it go? I've got them all in a folder or a collection here. So yeah, I've got Horror Star by Grady Hendrix, which I'm looking forward to tackling. I've got the Mammoth Book of Folk Horror. That was the anthology I talked about earlier. I've got the American Library editions of Edgar Allan Poe and Lovecraft and H.P. Lovecraft. They're two separate books. In a Glass Darkly by Sheridan Le Fanu. The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, which, believe it or not, I've never read. The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. And then I got a whole mess of Robert McCammon books on here, too. His first novel was called, and I don't know if this is how you pronounce it or not, Baal or Baal. Definitely qualified as one of those, you know, horrible children books. Boy's Life, Mine, Bethany's Sin, The Night Boat, Stinger, and Swan Song. I have all of those. And those are all by Robert McCammon. I've got a nonfiction book about Universal Horrors. It talks about all the Universal horror movies. The Picture of Dorian Gray would qualify as classic horror. Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked This Way Comes is in the folder, but I'm probably not going to read that for Horror Mayhem because I try to read that every October. I didn't like it the first time I read it, but it grew on me when I realized I was reading a long poem rather than an actual novel. So when I started reading it out loud, it made a lot more sense to me because, you know, poems are meant to be read out loud. So yeah, I've also got a collection of short stories from Charles Beaumont. I've got the Best of Richard Matheson here. I've got the Penguin Book of Ghost Stories. I mean, there's a lot to dig into here. I won't get to all of these. I've got The Walking Dead, The Rise of the Governor. I talked about that a little bit earlier. And The Walking Dead, The Road to Woodbury, which I think picks up right after Rise of the Governor. leaves off. Ooh, I definitely want to get to this, The King in Yellow by Robert Chambers. I've always meant to read that one too. So yeah, I've got more horror than I'm probably going to read for Horror Mayhem. But I would encourage you to participate in this event. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So that is my combination Horror Mayhem announcement video and TBR for May video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're still watching, thanks for staying for the whole thing. And I'll be back with more videos soon. Maybe not today, but probably tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Stay sexy, folks.